If you're listening to this right now, don't forget to hit subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's something that actually happened to me, and maybe sharing it will keep at least one of you safe. My name's Daniel, I'm 34, and I work as a systems administrator in a small town you've probably never heard of. I've never been into conspiracy theories, aliens, or any of that sci-fi stuff. I liked routine, structure, things that made sense. But what happened that night ripped the floor out from under everything I thought I knew. Started like any other late shift. I stayed late at the office patching a server, way past when the buses had stopped running. I didn't mind. I lived about 40 minutes away on foot, and I usually cut through the edge of the woods to save time. People around town always said not to, especially at night. You'll hear things you won't like. The old janitor once told me with this dead serious look. I brushed it off as superstition. That night, my headphones had died, so I was walking in silence, the sound of my own footsteps crunching over the gravel path. The air was damp, fog rising from the ground, carrying the smell of pine and wet earth. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something odd. The woods were too quiet. Not just quiet, but dead. No owls, no insects, not even the distant hum of traffic. It was like someone had sucked the sound out of the world. I pulled out my phone, checking for signal, and that's when I noticed the light. At first I thought it was the moon breaking through the clouds, but it was too sharp, too white. A beam, cutting down through the mist about 100 feet ahead of me, like a spotlight searching the ground. My stomach clenched. I froze, telling myself maybe it was some night hunter with high-powered gear, or maybe the forestry service. But then it moved. Not the way a helicopter or drone would move. It glided, smooth, silent, almost liquid. The beam swept across the trees, and when it passed near me, every hair on my body stood on end. My phone flickered, then went black. No signal, no screen, nothing. That's when I realized it wasn't just out there. It was looking for me. I don't know why I knew that, but I felt it in my chest, like an instinct deeper than logic. I crouched low and tried to back away, slow at first, then faster until I was half jogging down the path. The light shifted, following. My breath came hard and loud in the silence, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. Then the woods lit up like daylight. I spun around, and there it was. Not a saucer, not a cliché disc, but something more angular, black against the fog with edges that seemed to shimmer like heat waves. The light underneath spread out in a perfect cone, sweeping, searching. I ducked into the underbrush, crawling through mud and thorns, trying not to make a sound. I could feel it above me, like pressure in the air, humming against my teeth. Then, for just a second, the beam caught me. My whole body seized up, locked in place. I couldn't move, couldn't even scream. My eyes burned with white light, and just before everything went black, I thought I heard something. Like a voice, not outside but inside my skull, whispering my name. When I came to, I wasn't in the forest anymore. At first, I thought maybe I'd collapsed and someone had carried me somewhere. But the second I opened my eyes, I knew that wasn't true. The air was too clean, too sharp, like breathing in cold metal. Everything around me glowed with this dull bluish light that seemed to come from nowhere. No visible bulbs or lamps, just a haze of illumination that erased shadows. I was lying on a flat surface that looked like glass but felt warmer, almost pulsing underneath me like it had a heartbeat. My limbs were stiff, heavy, but no longer frozen. Slowly, I tried to sit up, but something held me back. A thin restraint across my chest, arms, legs. They weren't straps, not metal, not plastic, but some kind of shimmering band of light that bent like fabric yet dug into me with the weight of iron. I started to panic, straining against it, but the harder I fought, the tighter it pulled. Then I realized I wasn't alone. To my left and right, other figures lay on similar surfaces. I couldn't see them clearly. Their faces were obscured by a faint mist that clung to the air like smoke, but they were human. I could make out hair, arms, legs, the faint rise and fall of breathing. One of them, a woman with long dark hair, stirred and let out a weak groan. That sound sent a chill down my spine. Whoever or whatever had us here, we weren't the first. I turned my head and finally saw it. Not them. Just one, at least in that moment. It stood maybe 8 feet tall, long and impossibly thin, its arms reaching almost to its knees. The skin wasn't gray like the pop culture drawings. It was translucent, like frosted glass with faint blue veins glowing beneath the surface. Its head was elongated, eyes huge and black, reflecting everything like a mirror. No nose, just narrow slits, and a mouth that didn't move as it spoke. Except it didn't speak out loud. The words slid straight into my mind like thoughts I hadn't created. "You will not be harmed if you comply." My chest tightened. It wasn't English, not exactly. It was like meaning bypassed language, but my brain dressed it in words anyway. I wanted to scream at it, ask what it wanted, demand to know where I was. But when I tried to shout, no sound came. My throat burned, but the restraints had locked my jaw, holding it just open enough to breathe. The creature drifted closer. Yes, drifted, its steps not really steps, but a kind of floating motion, as if the floor itself carried it. In its hand, if you could call the long, 3-fingered appendage a hand, it held a device that pulsed with light. It raised it over me, and my chest erupted in searing heat. My vision blurred, a high-pitched ringing drilling through my skull. I thrashed, tried to wrench free, but the restraint bands only dug deeper. Then the heat snapped off. The alien tilted its head, like a scientist adjusting a microscope, watching me react. That was when I realized it wasn't just experimenting. It was measuring, testing, cataloging, like I was a specimen. Through the haze, I glanced at the woman nearby. Her eyes were open now, wide with terror, glistening with tears. Her lips moved soundlessly, begging, pleading, but the restraints gagged her the same way they gagged me. The alien moved to her next, raised the device, and for the first time I heard something out loud. Not a voice, a scream, hers. The restraints didn't stop that. Her cry was sharp, raw, the sound of pure agony that cut straight through me. I clenched my eyes shut, but I couldn't block it out. I couldn't block any of this out. The ringing in my skull swelled again, and this time, layered beneath it, I heard voices. Not one, but many. Not whispers, but something deeper, like a chorus of thought pressing in from every angle. Observe, record, preserve. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew one thing. We weren't chosen at random. We were collected, and they weren't planning to let us go. I don't know how long I lay there, drifting between consciousness and that hollow, echoing ringing in my skull. But when I finally pushed my eyes open, the room had changed. The bluish haze had dimmed to a softer, more clinical white, and the surfaces around us curved into angles that made my stomach lurch, like being inside the wrong end of a seashell. The other people were awake now, shuffling, groaning, rubbing their faces I could finally make out. A teenager with a hoodie, a middle-aged farmer with calloused hands, a nurse with a name badge still pinned crooked to her scrub top. We all looked at each other with the same question burned into our features. How do we get out? My own hands shook when I tested the restraint. The bands responded to the smallest twitch, tightening like a living thing. I learned quickly that aggression only made them clamp harder. Calm, precise motions were the only ones that loosened them at all. It felt like the thing knew when you panicked and punished you for it. After what felt like hours, someone, maybe the nurse, muttered a word that broke the silence. Why? It echoed off the curved walls and then returned, distorted, into everyone's heads as if someone else translated it. Data acquisition, the whisper answered. Not from any human mouth, but from that same chorus of thought. Survival metrics, genetic variance, adaptive response. It was clinical, devoid of malice, as if the act of cataloging a life was as routine as reading a page. That realization hit me harder than any physical pain. Whatever these things were doing, they had no concept of cruelty. They had only objectives. Objectives that used us as variables. The nurse began to cry. I wanted to comfort her, but the restraints made it awkward, made me feel helpless in a way that drowned me. I remember at one point the teenager, Tom, he later told us his name, started to laugh. It was high and hysterical and then turned into a sob. I couldn't tell if he laughed because the absurdity of our situation finally broke him, or because there was nothing left to lose. It was then that the walls themselves shifted. Panels slid open, revealing corridors beyond, long, tubular pathways lit with the same soft glow. Figures moved there too, smaller than the first creature I'd seen, more numerous, like technicians tending to some vast, living machine. They didn't look at us the way predators look at prey. They moved with the detached focus of people who had done this 100 times. One of them paused, its head tilting as if listening to something we couldn't hear. Then it raised an instrument and traced a pattern of faint lights on the floor. The floor beneath us thrummed in response, and the restraints loosened a notch. For the first time since I woke up, I could wiggle a finger. It was a tiny victory, but it sparked an idea. If we could provoke the wrong sequence of responses, maybe we could trick the system. I began watching, learning the rhythm of their work like a gambler memorizes a dealer's tells. The creatures weren't stupid. They reacted to chemical signatures, to heat, to the electrical hum of human thought. But they seemed to underestimate complexity. A body that convulsed unpredictably, a mind that screamed internally while staying silent. Those things registered as noise, and noise confused their instruments. Over the next stretch, we synchronized. The nurse would count silently in her head. Tom would cough at measured intervals. The farmer would flex his toes, and I would press against the restraint in a set pattern. To an outside observer, it must have looked like random convulsions, but inside the machine it created a feedback loop that, bit by bit, loosened our bindings. We weren't stealthy. Stealth didn't belong to our species here, but we were stubborn, and apparently that mattered. I wish I could say the escape was cinematic. It wasn't. It was clumsy and desperate and almost immediately brutal. The first band around my wrist snapped when I managed to wedge my elbow under it and lever until something gave. The nurse got free next and immediately went for the boy beside her, helping him up like a practiced first responder. The corridor beyond the room opened into a larger space that smelled faintly metallic and tasted like ozone. There were other rooms visible through translucent partitions. People in various states of consciousness, some sedated, some awake and staring blankly. A bank of instruments lined one wall, blinking quietly. A projected map, if you could call it that, hung in the center of the room, not as an image but as a three-dimensional field of shimmering points and lines that rotated slowly like a living star chart. I wanted to memorize it. I wanted to learn everything about where we were and how to get back. But the thing that stopped me cold was not the map. It was what the map revealed when I focused. Among the points marked in slow pulsing light, one cluster matched the coordinates of our little town. Nearby, another slower, colder pulse marked one of the satellites I used at work, the same network we depended on for routing and backups. It dawned on me with a kind of sick, crawling clarity. This wasn't an aimless abduction. They were mapping human infrastructure, our tech, our systems, layering it over biology. The purpose became uglier than random curiosity. Felt like a pattern I had to disrupt. We moved then, quietly, with the clumsy stealth of people who had nothing to lose. Just as we reached the corridor's bend, alarms, if you could call that chorus of thought an alarm, flickered through the room. The creatures reacted instantly. Doors hissed shut, partitions slid down, and the glow intensified until it hurt to look. I felt the restraints lurch, like hands grabbing us back into place, and for a moment I thought it was over. Then something unexpected happened. One of the smaller creatures hesitated at the threshold, head cocked. Then it turned and, for reasons I still don't understand, didn't press the override. Instead, it raised its hand in a way that looked almost like a human gesture of pause. In that heartbeat, A slit opened in the outer hull, an old seam that someone had forgotten to seal, and a thin shaft of night air cut through the sterile light. The smell of pine rolled in with it like a benediction. I don't know why that small mercy existed, but I grabbed it. I dove through the slit, dragging the nurse and the farmer with me, and we spilled out into a dark expanse that rolled away like a field of glass. Above us, the stars were wrong, too sharp, arranged in angles that made my head swim. But there was real sky, and for the first time since the forest, I tasted wind that wasn't manufactured. We ran without looking back. Behind us the ship sang, low and terrible, and I felt it underfoot like thunder. We hit the ground like animals and tumbled into a shadowed copse of alien flora that cut at our skin with thin, bristle-like leaves. Pain blurred into motion, motion into will. I thought maybe we had a chance. Then I saw the light sweeping the ground in the distance, methodical as a tide. It was coming for us. We ran until our lungs burned, until the night itself seemed to fight against us. The alien light swept across the alien flora, bright and sharp, carving white stripes through shadowed groves. Each step was agony. My ankle twisted on hidden roots, skin cut by thorn-like leaves, but there was no stopping. Behind us, I could hear the hum of the ship, low and relentless, like a heartbeat that belonged to something much bigger than life itself. We ducked behind a fallen trunk, panting, listening. The light passed, but I knew it would return. Nothing on that vessel was random. My mind raced. The slip in the hull, the hesitation of that smaller creature. It was a chance, maybe the only one, and we had to exploit it. I checked the others. The nurse's face was smeared with dirt and blood, but her eyes burned with the same stubborn refusal I felt. Tom, the teenager, kept shaking, muttering numbers under his breath, trying to make sense of a pattern he didn't fully understand. The farmer gripped my arm, whispering, "Where the hell do we go?" I had no answer. The surrounding terrain was alien, strange, distorted trees with bioluminescent veins, a river that shimmered like liquid silver in the darkness. But it was the only cover we had. "We follow the light, but not straight," I said, trying to sound certain, though my heart pounded in my throat. "We zigzag, keep low, and move fast." We waited for a gap, then bolted. Branches clawed at our faces, roots tangled our feet, but we ran like prey with the scent of a predator in the air. The light swept past, missing us by inches. I could feel the pressure of its focus, like it could sense our heat, our heartbeat, our very intent, even from a distance. It was hunting, and we were the quarry. After what felt like an eternity, we stumbled onto a slope that led to a cliff edge. The terrain was jagged, the ground unstable, but it offered the only possible escape. Below, a thick fog obscured the drop, but I glimpsed the dark outline of a river valley. "We jump," I said, voice barely audible. "We have to." They hesitated, terror etched in every line of their faces. I grabbed them, forcing the motion. One step, then another, and we leapt together, tumbling into the unknown. The fall was brutal. I felt bones scrape, joints twist, but miraculously we landed in the thick fog, muffled and softened. Silence. For a long moment the world held its breath with us. Then came the hum again, not from above, but beneath the fog, distant but aware. We scrambled, bleeding, bruised, through the underbrush, trying to put every possible obstacle between ourselves and that relentless intelligence. I don't remember how long we ran. Time lost meaning. Every crackle of twigs, every whisper of wind set my nerves on fire. And then, finally, we reached the edge of what looked like a human settlement. Dim streetlights, the soft glow of windows, the smell of asphalt and damp grass. Reality itself felt fragile as I stepped onto the road, half expecting it to vanish. I turned back once. There, above the tree-line, the ship hovered for a heartbeat before vanishing, folding into the night sky with impossible speed, leaving no trace but a faint hum still lingering in my chest. We didn't speak. We stumbled through town, wounded, exhausted, and when the first police cruiser rolled past, its lights cutting across the pavement, we froze. Our stories wouldn't be believed, not fully, not without proof. But we had survived. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep. Shadows moved too fast, lights flickered strangely, and every whisper of static in a device made my skin crawl. I started keeping a journal documenting every detail because if this ever happened again to anyone, I wanted someone to understand. The others eventually drifted back into their lives, changed in ways too subtle to notice but deep enough to haunt them forever. And me? I stayed vigilant. Nights became my enemy, yet I walked them anyway, eyes scanning the sky for any anomaly, ears straining for the faintest hum. Part of me wanted answers. Part of me feared them more than anything. I still see the faint glow sometimes, hovering just beyond the clouds. A reminder, a warning. And I know deep down that what we saw that night is not done with us. They observe, they calculate, they wait. We are variables in an experiment far larger than comprehension. I don't tell many people. I don't need to. The memory is enough to keep me awake, alert, cautious. But now, after years, I can tell my story, and if you hear it, really hear it, maybe you'll understand. Some things in the sky are not stars. Some things are alive, intelligent, and they are closer than you think. And when they choose to watch, you have no choice but to run.